Hi and welcome to Behind the Mic. My name is Cynthia Mwangi and today we are in the presence of greatness. We are talking to someone who has a great, extensive experience in media and marketing, and his experience in media and TV and radio, public relations, and quite a number of other things expand to about, what, 15, 20 years, thereabout?
Starting with the late Catherine Kasavoli, may her soul rest in peace. I'd say I've worked with some of the most beautiful anchors. There was Julie, there was Kathleen Openda, there was Sophie Kenye, Kasavoli, of course. There's just been an interesting character of people that you come across when you're doing that kind of thing. We've now become to a point where we consume media so fast. We've got the attention span of a goldfish. Within 3 seconds, that is gone. That is gone. That story has now come out, etc., etc. So, well, I said it's a double-edged sword because media houses have to pay salaries. And the only way you're going to get that is getting audiences. However, audiences are not necessarily interested in human interest stories. They want something that can be consumed quickly.
I am in absolute awe to be sitting here with him. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Waweru Njoroge.
Thank you so much, Cynthia.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mara.
Very humbled.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sitting with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I know in another life you'd have been an advocate.
Yes, actually, my first career. I tell a lie. I actually wanted initially to become a pilot.
Oh, now you tell me?
Yes, but okay, fine. The reason being is that I thought it was a very nice job and stewardesses look hot. So put 2 and 2 together and you're like, yeah, okay, fine. That's my main calling in terms of why I wanted to be a pilot.
Could have told me.
Yeah, when that kind of hit the rocks, then I started lawyer because I wanted to actually say that there's good to be done in the world. So I was coming from a good place in terms of saying that justice needs to be done. We've seen so many injustices. Then ended up doing design and technology. It's very far removed from being a pilot to being a lawyer.
But everything is removed in your case. I mean,
the thing is, I came to realize that you don't. There's a lot of people now in terms of how their careers work, where you studied one thing and you end up in a completely different field in terms of what you expected to be doing.
Right.
So that's, yeah, it's a bit of a different way of looking at things, basically. And the way you've just introduced me, I think you've done everything, so we can finish here.
Yeah, I think we're done. Thank you much, everybody, for tuning in. This was fantastic. See you again on the next episode of Behind the Mic. So, now, we know you from TV and radio, right?
Yes.
And a bit of marketing, I guess, here and there, for those who know you from that end.
Yeah, okay.
But if someone was to ask, who is Waweru Njoroge?
Well, in essence, actually, the way you introduced me, thank you so much for the introduction.
I mean, I tried. I mean, I didn't even do it justice. But,
okay, the one for the PR version, I'd say I'm a responsible, task-oriented, innovative, and experienced media practitioner with an extensive background, like you said, of about 20 years in TV, radio, and advertising.
Right.
I've worked with large multinational brands, regional and locally set up industries, as well as some, take up on new venture companies. I'd go on to say that I'm a creative and adaptable individual with excellent eye for both executional and qualitative attention to detail, design and delivery, basically, yeah.
So how did you end up in media? I mean...
how much time do you have?
Oh,
actually...
I got time.
I'm not sure how many people actually know this. I actually started media by mistake. There was a station back in the day that's now changed names, but it was called East FM. There was 2 friends of mine, Paris and Deepan. We knew each other from social circles. And East FM at the time were looking for presenters. And I took them, this was now industrial area, I took them for their interviews. And as a joke, they said, why don't you give it a try? And I was thinking, why would a Kikuyu boy be doing an Indian radio station in what capacity? So we did the voice test, and the head of radio at the time was a lady called Zara Omar. And they said, okay, fine, when can you start? So I start doing what? We want you to do radio for East FM. I was like, okay. And then on top of it, they said, we want you to do the breakfast show on East FM. And most breakfast shows are meant to be the flagships of the way people engage with the station. So yeah, I was breakfast show presenter for East FM.
You still haven't answered the question though.
How did I get into it? That was it.
No. You said, how does a Kikuyu boy end up in...
I don't know, it's my boyish good looks and my magnetic personality.
Wow.
No, but it was pure chance. I mean, it was, I guess it's either aspects of serendipity, opportunity when it knocks, answer the door kind of thing. And that was basically, it gave me also an appreciation for culture in terms of Indian culture especially. It allowed me then to look at aspects of different kind of cultures and how they interact.
Right.
Being able to be more diverse, being able to be more inclusive. Not necessarily more tolerant, but coming from a position of saying, okay, fine, I might understand where this person is coming from.
Yeah.
So in that aspect, I think media gave me a lot more than I would have done if I just decided to stay within either PR, because that's where I started off. But a mix of both media and advertising makes one, I think, a much more rounded individual in terms of, like I said, creative thinking, problem solving, and things like that, yeah.
So while you were taking your social friends to East FM,
Yeah.
where were you coming from?
The time, I believe I was working with, as in physically where I was coming from, or which, where,
Well, you know, we can start with the physically first and then we'll go to the next.
I think we were coming from gypsies.
Wow.
Yeah, what was then gypsies? And it was pure chance. I don't even remember how we heard about it. It's just these guys said, okay, fine, we're going to, I said, yeah, let me tag along. And yeah, that was...
Please tell me they got the job though.
No, they didn't actually. Yeah, so East FM started breakfast. So then because of commitments at work, I moved to a Saturday morning show called Wes's World. I have a nickname called Wes. Two variations of how that name came about. When I was in university, I went and told people my name is Waweru. And they said, okay, fine, we cannot pronounce Waweru, so we're going to call you Dub, because your first name starts with W. So one of my names in university was Dub. And then apparently, I had an attitude like Wesley Snipes.
Right.
Where that comes from, I'm not entirely sure. So they said, okay, fine, we're going to call you Wes. So that name kind of stuck. So Wes's World was just basically a fun show for kids. I had a lot of Indian ladies who call in and say, oh, my son loves your show, and can you please give him this music and whatever. So I know a lot of Indian music. I also know how to cuss you out in Indian. It's just a very wrong, you can't say Indian. The way people say Chinese is a language. It's Cantonese or Mandarin.
Right.
So Indian, you'll either be doing Gujarati or, yes, that kind of thing. So let me make that correction there.
But we learn something new every day. Thank you very much. So your background in PR, that's where you started initially?
Basically, I'm working with Gina Din. And then from there, I moved to Century Advertising. Century Advertising, I got to Ovidian. Now, Ovidian is one that I plugged back into media because at the time I was working with Ovidian, we had the APA Awards, Advertisers Practitioners Awards. And because Creative Business was one of the hosts, they asked for an MC from our company. So there's three other MCs. There's Monica, myself, and I can't remember the third person. So we finished the night as MC and everything, and the head of KTN at the time was Isaiah Kabira. Isaiah came up to me and said afterwards, I like the way you present yourself. Njoroge is going to be taking a bit of a break, a sabbatical of sorts. So I want you to come and train with Catherine Kasavoli.
Right.
I want to see whether we can put you on air. And that's how I got into KTN, or at least now that stepping stone within media started properly and ingrained or embedded itself. So started off with the 1 o'clock bulletins, because I think it was a safe space for them. They were like, if this guy cocks up, at least he's not doing it name damage within 9 o'clock kind of thing. So from there, then progressed to 9 o'clock, and that was basically how I started KTN. That was 2001 to 2006. Meantime, I was still working at Ovidian. Sorry, Creative Business. Then I moved to Ovidian. So I've done many things. I printed billboards. I used to fly to Uganda with billboards because they didn't have billboard printers then. Yeah, so I've done many things. I don't know whether I have anything to show for it, but yeah, I've done quite a few things. So
do us a favor and take us back to your formative years.
Well, I'm getting a bit long in the tooth, so I wouldn't say I remember everything with precise recollection. But the one thing that, again, I don't think many people know is that while, and this is not an aspect of tribalism or anything like that, by virtue of what my name is, suggests that I'm a Kikuyu. Yes?
Yeah.
Well,
does.
Suggests.
Yeah.
That's the word, though, the name suggests primarily then stems from the fact that when I started school, because I'd been kind of raised up in Gishagi, I knew a lot of Kikuyu. I was very good at it, even if I do say so myself. So by the time I was getting to my nursery year 1, I didn't quite understand what the teacher was saying because they were speaking English, and I was like, what do you mean?
Not loading.
So I then thoroughly threw myself into the English language. And much to the chagrin of my parents now, I'm not exactly the best Kikuyu speaker. Yeah, so that's something that's very embellished in my formative years as such. But beyond that, yeah, I mean, it was a good childhood. I loved it. Ended up, and again, this is my ego jumping in. Ended up being head boy at Nairobi Academy. Something about Nairobi Academy and the nickname we used to have. Again, I think this is also what helped me get into East FM. Nairobi Academy was very strongly populated by Indians.
Right.
I think we had 5 Miros in my year.
And by Miros, you mean, I mean, this is for anybody who is born in 2000 and just 2000 coming this way.
These Miros, people of dark color? No, okay, fine. But okay, fine. In terms of a population of X amount of students, I think in my year, by the time I was about to leave, we had about 5 or 6 people.
Right.
Who were, like I said, who were Miros.
Yes.
And out of that, the entire population of the senior school, I was made head boy. And I was like, okay, fine.
Oh, wow.
I don't know whether it was token or
Unicorn
not.
much?
Yeah.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that was, I mean, I don't know whether I would then say that I felt a sense of leadership, which is good. And it allows you then to apply some aspects of responsibility in terms of what you do. I'm not saying I'm always responsible, but it was a nice stepping stone in terms of understanding how, not necessarily to manage people, but how to manage expectations.
Right.
And how to now look at aspects of responsibility. Like I said, I'm not going to say I got that right every single time, even to this day. But it was a good stepping stone in terms of understanding and cutting my teeth in terms of how now trying to prepare you for life in terms of, you know, adversities you're going to face, situations you have to make decisions where that are not always going to be popular. But yeah, that's where that came from.
So from there, where did you go to?
Nairobi Academy, left and I went to a place that was unpronounceable at the time in my head. It's a place called Loughborough University. Loughborough is spelled, and my spelling is crap as well, Loughborough. Ruguafara, or Loughborough. Right, so that's
well done.
Yeah, so that's exactly. So that was Loughborough. This design and technology. And then I did my master's in management then, and that's when I came back to Kenya.
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
You know?
Welcome back.
So that's basically in terms of education-wise and everything. And then like I said, I started at Junior Din.
Right.
Yeah.
So you check into Kenya, get into Junior Din, get into East FM, then to KTN.
Yes.
In that order.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So KTN, here you are. You're holding fort for somebody else who happens to have somewhere very close, similar names.
True.
Yeah.
True.
I mean, it's not like they were trying to find a replacement or anything. So anyway,
maybe deep down inside somewhere they were, but it was because KTN was was part-time, so I still had my day job, as it were. At this point in time, I had finished with the Vidian. Trying to remember what it was. I think that's when I ventured into startup company. There's a company called Trans-Africa Energy, and we were trying to jump in on this bandwagon of the government announcing that all new developments have to have solar water heating and everything.
Right.
So I attempted, rather unsuccessfully, to do solar water heating. And it was just, I think I was always wanting to gravitate back towards media. So that's when I came back into media through now Nation Media Group. My initial stint in Nation Media Group was as a creative. Sorry, I missed out. In between, it was Capital FM actually. How did I forget that?
Oh, there you go.
Capital FM was a lot of fun. I mean, to this day, I still call Capital FM my family. I started a breakfast show with Waweru Njoroge. And then I was told you're crap on radio. Actually, I don't know. So I was then moved to the creative department. So creative writing for clients say, I want my brand to say this, that, and the other. I want a mechanic that will give away prizes.
Right.
So we used to do creative concepts for radio activations. So that was how I got it now Capital FM. Beyond the radio presenter side, now to the creative side of the team.
Right.
And actually, one of the things I remember the most was an activation for Diageo, who then came up and said, okay, by the way, how do you know so much about whiskey? I said, well, it was basic research and stuff. So they said, okay, fine. We're looking for brand ambassadors.
Yeah, it's
alcoholic beverages.
Yes.
But, especially because of watersheds. But they said, okay, fine. We're trying to now re-energize the brand in this market. So they said, how do you feel about going to Scotland for 4 days? And then you come back and we'll pay you to teach people how to drink. And I was like, I couldn't sign up fast enough. I was like, okay, fine, done, no problem. So now when I left Capital FM, and I had the opportunity now to work with NTV, or Nation Media Group. So the deal was you'll come in and you'll do anchoring. So my day job was actually creative, writing for now Easy FM as a creative site.
Right.
And then my nighttime job, my Batman job, was anchoring on NTV. So that's how you see that thread of media keeps coming back. No matter how much I try and run away from it, it keeps pulling me back.
What was your best experience across the media houses?
I would have to say the people I've worked with. Starting with the late Catherine Kasavoli, may I say rest in peace. I'd say I've worked with some of the most beautiful anchors. There was Julie, there was Kathleen Openda, there was Sophie Kenye, Kasavoli, of course. There's just been an interesting character of people that you come across when you're doing that kind of thing. It also gave me, I think, one of the, also did, Kinara Resian Labai, and yeah, so that's when now I did my K24 kind of thing. But I think the biggest takeaway from it was being able to understand that what is always reported is not necessarily what is always true. I think there's an aspect of myopia sometimes where people have an aspect of they take a piece of what they think is the truth and then make that their belief. So for me, I think the best part of being in media was the learning experience in terms of being able to broaden the way I think, broaden the way you look at things. So that would be my main takeaway, actually.
For that?
Yeah.
So there's usually a bit of love-hate relationship between PR agencies and media companies. You've been on both ends of this.
Yes.
What is your take on it?
When I was on PR side, I was trying to push stories down the media houses' throats, and they were not having any of it. So that really, really frustrated me. Now on the other side, we've got people saying, "Yeah, take my story, take my story." It's like, no, it doesn't. I'm sorry, it's not within our class or whatever. So yeah, at least that's what I'm saying. The appreciation of the way the dynamics works within, that, like you said, the dynamics between PR and media, and advertising as well. In that, fine, you have what you think is a brilliant advert, or you have a brilliant piece of copy. And it will not pass what a media house considers to be something that will attract their audience. A lot of people seem to think because I have a good product, I can sell it to you, I can give it to a media house and they'll take it up and think it's the best thing since I've read. And they don't start to realize, actually, these people have a particular target audience or people they're trying to talk to, so it might not necessarily fit. And for me to get that appreciation started with the writing of creative concepts for radio stations, because you have to be very targeted at who you're talking to in terms of how the brand equity looks like, what the brand talks about, what the voice of the brand is like that. So it's a very symbiotic relationship. I think you stretch yourself a bit thin if you try and straddle every single sphere. So specialization would be something that I would say I did more so on the creative side of writing. But that also then gives me a bigger appreciation for the journalism field. Also gives me a much greater appreciation for what people do when they go out in the fields. It's easy enough to sit behind an auto cue and say, oh, so today and so did whatever. And then people don't tend to acknowledge the people who are behind the scenes. The camera people, the producers, the phone that's ringing. All those kind of things.
Right.
People tend to see the front end and say, okay, fine, that's a beautiful piece. And they'll remember who did it for them in terms of who the anchors are. But you know the credits when they finish at the end of news and they just scroll through and you don't see the people who've actually done the work.
Yes.
I think that's another thing that being in the industry now made me really appreciate. Because I'd consume media the same way everybody does. Right, who's our news anchor today? It's so and so and so and so. That's all I care about.
Yeah.
You know? And then also the other, so that's primarily what
and
gives
the
me
other
appreciation. No, the other thing that you realize was people don't necessarily pay attention to what's coming out of your mouth. The first thing they do is look at what you're wearing. Oh, that tie doesn't go very well. No, but that hairstyle is so wrong, and what have you. So a lot of people used to ask me, why are you always so serious in the news? Why don't you ever smile? And I was like, news is serious business, you know? It's the way, I don't know, maybe sometimes I was so nervous. And even after doing it for 5 years in one media station, then doing it another 3, I always used to find that I'm nervous. Whenever I go onto set, we'll joke and laugh about it beforehand. But then when you go to when you're told you're on air, like, yeah, okay, fine, this is serious business.
A lot of the media houses have received quite a lot of flack because they seem to be elevating certain, say, media people or certain influencers, to make it clear, as opposed to people who would be seen as having a lot more weight in the industry. Say you have studied media, communications, PR, and so therefore maybe you'd make a better presenter than somebody else. Or certain content seems to be traveling a little faster than actual human interest stories. Say there's a clip of an interview. He's quite a funny guy, but he's being asked questions, and all he does is smile and say, I don't know. It has about, I think by the time we were shooting this, it was about 1.5 or 1.7 million people had interacted with it. And so it was being compared to content, say, on climate change. And they're asking, why is this one not traveling as fast? So is it a media thing or is it the consumer kind of thing? Who seems to be failing the other? And is it failing per se?
Well, when you're living in an age where clicks are more important, as in you're trying to get as many likes as possible, because then apparently that draws more people to whatever, and then more to your site or whatever the case may be, and around that you can sell advertising. So I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword. What is of interest to me as a consumer is probably something that would be might lend itself more to masochism. We talked about the aspect of why people rubberneck. When you see an accident, you turn and you say, oh my God, that is so horrible. And then you go to the bar and say, by the way, did you see that guy was mangled? So, against what you're saying about a human interest story, and excuse my French, maybe it's not sexy enough, which is unfortunate because, like you said, the weight of somebody who has a human interest story, poverty, etc., etc., etc. I don't think the narrative has been beaten to death, but I think we've now become to a point where we consume media so fast. We've got the attention span of a goldfish. Within 3 seconds, that is gone. That is gone. That story has now come out, etc., etc. So, when I said it's a double-edged sword, because media houses have to pay salaries, and the only way you're going to get that is getting audiences. However, audiences are not necessarily interested in human interest stories. They want something that can be consumed quickly, can be retyped in 140 words, whatever the case may be.
280, yeah.
Is it now 280?
Yep.
Oh, when I started it was 140. 141, I think. But anyway, do you see what I'm saying? In the sense that we consume media or we consume our content in very short bites because we don't have the luxury of time to go and sit. I can't remember the last time somebody, I mean, unless it's a Rika, like 2 Rikas ahead of me, 2 generations ahead of me, who actually sit and do with a newspaper, you know, kind of thing. And it's something that I mean, it's the way we consume media, especially from our phones, from our tablets, etc. And I'll tell you, this is a true story. I was reading a newspaper I think towards the end of last year, and you turn a newspaper page. I went to swipe up. On a physical broad page, you're actually going to swipe up thinking, okay.
Because you kind of need to go to the next page.
Basically, you know, and yeah, so I think, to reiterate, we consume media in small chunks, as opposed to then saying, okay, fine, and the thing is, by the time this story has enough gusto or enough meat for you to try and actually then say, okay, fine, how do we expand this any further? Something else has come up, you know, and that's been overtaken by events. Russia-Ukraine was a huge story to start with. Affected economic markets, has done many other things. Now, every other story is about, yes, we're sending tanks, okay, Biden was in Ukraine, etc., etc. Our interest here, maybe for us as Kenyans, is slightly different. We are looking at some of the utterances that some of our politicians are making and thinking, Does that make any sense to anybody? We're busy wondering about Chinese balloons that have been shot down. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's overtaken. Now the second earthquake in Turkey as well, you know. So things are happening so fast. We don't have the luxury of sitting and then looking at this. Gone are the days where you used to open KBC VOK at the time. Start with Today's Excellency, President Daniel, whatever, which was always, and he was always building Gambians and
planting trees.
That was news.
Yeah.
And that was news. The more sensationalist it is, the more likely you're going to get eyeballs, you're going to get clicks. The story about somebody, a guy who stole a chicken who's jailed for 5 years, right? Vis-a-vis a politician or a prominent person who did X, Y, and Z, who got away scot-free, or got away with a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
That makes more interesting viewing. For me, it doesn't. It doesn't make more interesting consumer media consumption. And this person, why they're not seeing any kind of justice, why there's no lawyer who's come there. But this person will have a battery of about 20 lawyers to try and say, okay, fine, no, my client is innocent, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's unfortunately the way we are going. I think media has there's aspects in terms of how we either consume media or how we relate to media. We as the audience have trained media to give us what we want. Whereas it used to be the other way around. Media will tell you this is what you need to consume. We've trained them to say, okay, fine, I'm not interested in human interest stories. I want to Moshene about which maid did what with whose husband. That's for me what I want. So we've trained media to then give us the stories that we want to listen to, or want to view, or want to read. So that narrative has now been changed from what it used to be before, where you have you do have appointment times now. You switch on your TV at 7, you switch it on at 9 because you have appointment viewing. In between that, you can consume a lot of it in terms of your Twitter spheres and all other manner of media channels. There's a saying we used to have, and something I was looking at recently when we were Capital FM. It was read it tomorrow, watch it tonight, hear it now. So print was read it tomorrow, watch it tonight, your 7 p.m. there, hear it now. So Capital used to have a bulletin every single hour. If you look at it, the way media is consumed now, it's read it tomorrow, watch it tonight, hear it now, read it now.
And watch it now as well.
And watch it now as well, yeah exactly. So everything has just been encompassed in one, those 3 segments have just been put into one.
The reads now.
Yeah, basically.
And what we're doing now, do you think we care about the truth? Because then, I mean, all I have to do is point, shoot, and post it as fast as I can, not caring to cover about the truth or even trying.
Where that problem is, and the reason why people might not necessarily care about the truth, is because nobody holds them accountable for falsehoods, right? The aspect of post-truths, which is what Professor Peter Kangwana was talking about post-truth politics and how this government is now absorbing the opposition. But the aspect of believing, for example, Pizzagate 2016, Clinton, they said that this pizza outlet, Ping Pong or something like that, was the center of a child sex trafficking, whatever. As a result of that, a guy walked into the pizza place with a gun, coming to rescue the children.
Yeah.
Nobody verified it. Nobody put anything in terms of thought to say, okay, fine, maybe this might not be true, but the person who consumed it believed it to be true.
Yeah.
So his truth, whether it was very subjective, obviously not objective, that was his truth. But we do a lot of things now where it's not based on responsible. They talk about responsible drinking and things like that. We don't have. I wouldn't say everybody. I think there's an aspect where we've gone into a gray area. We don't have responsible journalism because we're so busy. We're now caught up in this consumer rat race. We're saying, how much advertising can I get from what I publish, what I sell, etc., etc. So yes, I think there's an element that, unfortunately, is letting media houses get away with a lot of stuff that they shouldn't be doing. But I think the counter of that is to say, okay, fine. Where do you get your verification? Where did you get your story? People like the Media Council of Kenya are meant to be, ideally, and even Communications Authority of Kenya, are meant to be the watchdogs, to say. But like I said, things come out so quickly that by the time you're verifying this one,
There's already
there's a different 10 different spin-offs, like you said, yeah.
Do you think there is room for a different kind of journalism where their role is now to just verify the facts and give you information, like correct information?
There's fact checks. I mean, there's fact checkers,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of media houses in this country need to then be a part of, so that it might delay something coming out, in which case you might miss an opportunity. But media houses plan themselves well in advance because you have certain dates in there. Unless it's a breaking story,
Right.
in which case I think something one of your journalists did the other day was to say this is not verified. Reports coming to our studio indicate, but nobody says, oh, so and so is doing this is whatever. So yes, there's a cautionary way you can actually do it, and I think that just boils down to training,
Right.
knowing when and how to break a breaking story without then implicating somebody else or trying to say this is God honest truth kind of thing. So holding people accountable by getting media houses to be part of fact checkers. I think that's one of the most important things. The other is to see who does this story benefit, as opposed to who does it hurt. I think those are they're not contentious issues. I think those are things that need to be taken into consideration, rather than putting out news for the sake of putting out news.
Right.
Yes, we have airtime that we need to fill sometimes, I agree, but make it worthwhile filling with, you know. Yeah, so that's my take on that one.
Your take on that.
And the reason why I come from that perspective is that 6 years ago, we did a documentary called Murder at Gotalila.
I was about to ask you about that.
Which RMS were very kind to run.
Yes.
So we did a lot of investigation, a lot of interviews, the likes of Dr. Ian West, John Troon, a lot of the people who were surrounding that whole concept, or rather the whole story about how the late Dr. Robert Tuko was killed. We did not come from it from a position of this is what we know. Or rather we said, okay, fine, this is what we know. Then we asked the question, but why? And then start looking at that and asking further questions. But if this is the case, then how does this... So empirical evidence and actual factual information, as opposed to, oh, I heard from Mama Boga, who heard from.
Yeah.
So you got this broken Chinese telephone, or whatever, this Chinese telephone, yeah. We have hearsay, stories that are handed down without anybody actually starting and sitting to think, actually, maybe that's not quite right. And the thing is, this narrative is still being propagated, or rather, its beliefs are still being propagated 33 years after he passed away. You know, will we ever get to the truth? Nobody seems to know. You have your Tom Byers, you have Dagama Pinto, you've got your Julie Wards. I don't know whether it's a matter of laziness. Maybe it's, I mean, right now you have Freedom of Information Acts, which allows you access to either telexes or what have you between certain embassies and governments, which didn't exist then. So it might have been harder actually to do an investigative piece then.
Yes.
But in this day and age, there's no excuse for making accusations or slanderous comments or whatever across any media house, not to say any, without actually then saying, okay, fine, here's a verifiable truth that this is the case. Yeah.
So we know making a documentary is not easy, right? Walk us through the journey of how was it that, like, how did you even sit and think, I think we need to do this?
It was actually done through somebody I work with very closely, a partner of mine, actually a friend. I wouldn't say a partner because partner sounds so formal. It's a friend of mine called Martin Mins. He's a political writer, and he just took an interest and said, okay, fine, so why, first of all, why is this story so big for Kenya?
Right.
Why does it elicit so much emotion? And from there, we decided, okay, fine, let's now look at it in a bit more depth, as opposed to what a lot of people had been saying about, for the longest time, oh, this happened at State House, this happened here, so-and-so, he fell out with so-and-so, and this, whatever, corruption reports, Manassas, etc., etc., etc. So we actually took the time now to say, okay, fine, who can we get in touch with? Who can we interview, or through by proxy, who can we find who actually has a more informed position, as opposed to either hearsay or innuendo or stuff that it made it sound good at the time, because that was I was telling you before, the aspect of I think, therefore I am, versus, I think,
I believe,
therefore I am, I believe, therefore I'm right.
Yes.
That's the area where a lot of people tend to sit with regards to how they perceive Robert Oko was murdered, passed away, etc., etc. So it was a lot of research, a lot of writing, a lot of scripting. Then the fun part came, where you can actually go and shoot the whole thing. And again, I'd never been to Koru, I'd never been to Gosalida. I remember when the incident happened in 1990, we were sent home from school because of the riots that were about to come out. That was at that time I did not realize the importance of what had happened, our foreign affairs minister being killed.
Yes.
Now when I look back and I look at why we were sent home, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You know? So that's the journey in itself. It requires a lot of research, a lot of verification. It's not an easy thing to do, especially when you have people whose narrative is specifically this is my way or the highway, or being very myopic in terms of, and I don't mean that as an insult to anybody, but in terms of, basically just understanding, like, fine, this is my belief, and it's not for you to change. It's like asking a flat worlder to believe the world is round. You can see even from space that it's a globe, but flat worlders will believe the world is flat, and that's their prerogative. I mean, you can't, if they're not willing to change their prerogative, it's not my fault. It's not my job to try and force it down your throat. All I can do is give you the facts as they are, and then you can make an informed decision.
Right.
So part of that, this kind of storytelling, I call it storytelling, but the documentary.
Yes.
Part of it was to now start looking at why do we accept things as they are, without now actually looking at the whys first of all, the what's, the why, what, and who, obviously. But in a deeper context, as opposed to just saying, okay, this is why, this is who, and this is how.
Yeah.
At a very top level kind of thing, without doing a bit more of deep diving. And it's not like the information is not available now. So there's a lot of narrative that can be changed on many other stories, not just Robert Oko. There's many other narratives that can be changed from that perspective. But, and I'm not saying journalists are lazy, but there's a degree of laziness somewhere. And I mean that, I don't mean that with any disrespect to any particular person.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So when you're not suited, what you doing?
I've just recently started a consulting business. I like to say I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. But the last project I did, again, you see now this is where I'm going to go. I keep jumping, my train of thought sometimes keep jumping. But, so the last project I did was an importation program for a solar plant in Keses, Eldoret.
And we're back to solar, look at you.
Yeah, I keep leaving and coming back to things. So, so we're putting up a 40 megawatt plant in Keses, Eldoret, which is now feeding into national grid. So what I was doing was dealing with the exemption process, because energy projects are exempt from duty. So now it's coordinating specific exemptions for each consignment that's coming in. There's something my dad was telling me in terms of the way, either from government or the way people look at things. If you look at why this project is so important to Kenyans, as opposed to what can I get from it in terms of the short term, is the fact that electricity allows you to do and manufacture things. When you look at manufacturing and industries that are fed by electricity, it means that you can create jobs. Creating jobs is basically good for the whole nation. But people are, again, I'll come back to this myopic thing in terms of, fine, I work here, my immediate job is this, how much money can I make from this for me as an individual? And not look at the long term in terms of how does it help the nation.
Right.
So that's now how I started doing consultancy. Yes, there's still an aspect in terms of what's in it for me, but I'm looking at aspects that allows you to say, okay, fine, where is the bigger good? Where's the greater good? So that's what I do right now in terms of consulting. And funny enough, I'm back to the Dr. Robert Oko story.
Right.
So I'm a rubber band. At any point, I stretch this way, then come back, stretch this way, come back, stretch this way, come back. I haven't thought about it until you just mentioned it now. So that's where I'm right now. I think it's good to be diverse in terms of how you do things, in terms of how you think about this. I did design technology. I don't. Okay. I play around with Photoshop and stuff like that, just to keep it sharp. But beyond that, the other thing I'm doing right now is there's a gig that's coming up for AFIS, which is the Association of Former International Civil Servants, and they asked me to be an MC. So I said, okay, fine. And then one day we were sitting at a restaurant, and they said, "Oh, this is our program." And I looked at the program and said, "Why does this look so kahe?" So they said, "You think you can do better?" And I did my thing from what I know in terms of my Photoshop and stuff like that. And they said, "Oh, okay. So can you do this?" I was like, "But you guys, my mandate was just to do MC." "No, but you know we needed it." So
you're doing it so much better.
I do like practicing those kind of things, but it allows me then to do things that I'm not within my exact immediate, say, okay, fine, this is my purview, this is all I can do, etc., etc. So it's good to diversify.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what would be your advice to someone who's trying to get into any industry, especially now in 2023 with AI checking in?
AI is an interesting one. By the way, ChatGPT is
mind-blowing.
It's going to revolutionize a lot of things. I think Google were also trying to do a similar.
Yes, they are.
But they, even on the launch, they kind of cocked that up. But okay, excuse my French again.
It's okay. It's all the German.
I don't know whether you want to then go to the aspects of citizen reporting. You asked about people coming into industry or wanting to do a career now in 2023.
Cut across. It doesn't even have to be in media. I mean, it could be pretty much any industry. But
I suppose, and this is sound like one of those people who teach or leadership courses and everything.
Yes, please.
Find your passion point, obviously. Within reason, and it has to be legal, obviously. You can't say my passion point is selling drugs, and that's what I'm good at.
That's not it.
But don't restrict yourself to what you think you can do. Like I said, there's a lot of people I know who did one particular thing and have ended up doing completely different things. You look at even those people who've had no formal education, who have still made money hand over fist, given those are the only stories we tend to find in the media. We don't find the ones that people who tried to do it and then ended up here, because we look at success stories and we believe that those are the things that we want to aspire to,
right? And
that's perfectly natural. But the one thing is, then there's a concept called if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. Be realistic about what you want to try and achieve. It's not to say that, as Lupita said, your dreams are valid. Your dreams are perfectly valid, but consider the environment you're in. Also do your homework in terms of what barriers to entry are there. If there's a barrier to entry, what is your mitigation? What's your fallback plan? You can't say, oh, because I didn't get this is the only thing I can actually do. So I suppose the advice for anybody getting into the industry in 2023 is be dynamic enough to say, okay, fine, this is not the only thing I can do. Be collaborative enough to say, okay, fine, I can put my pride away and ask for help and say, okay, fine, why don't we link up with somebody else as opposed to saying this, kind of thing. Partnerships. The other thing I think people should start looking at in terms of, and this is something that I'm actually seeing from a younger generation, invest early. So even if you're not necessarily, chamas are very good things, I think, for young people. I think those are very interesting in terms of different business minds coming together, identifying places where they can actually then generate wealth for themselves,
right,
and generate wealth for either community. They decide to build, put up milking farms or whatever the case may be. But yeah, diversify the way you think in terms of how business is done. And the way you can actually do that also is listening to a lot of TED Talks, doing things that are not necessarily within your comfort zone. Yeah, basically challenging yourself to say, okay, fine. And it's not like you can try it and then fail, but try it, Don't try it and say, oh, I found it too hard and I only kind of gave it half a chance. You're going to fail. You're going to fail. People fail spectacularly. It's not necessarily a good thing, but if you also succeed, you succeed so spectacularly.
Have you failed spectacularly?
Oh yeah.
Do you have one that's very memorable? One that made you just sit wait?
This now goes back to university. There's two that I can. Okay, no, this particular one, because it was very, very, very specific obviously to me.
Yes.
I think it was my second year of university. and we were given this opportunity to do direct sales. The way it was pitched was what made me really, and this is basically typically drinking with the wrong part of my body. But the way it was pitched is that you're going to go do direct sales, you're going to make a lot of money, and at the end of the summer, you are going to meet all these people who've got so much energy that they want to, so it's aspects of fornication that came up. And
Makes sense.
That
Great
makes
motivation.
sense. So the job was to go and sell books door to door in America.
Wow.
So moved from the UK, went to America, and we were taught, we went through a whole training session. You take your bag, take one step back, put your bag down and say, good morning, sir, madam, whatever. Are you interested in making your child's education better? So it was not quite an encyclopedia, it was like a condensed encyclopedia. So I knew the whole sales pitch fantastically well, everything was okay, target audience. I went to upmarket, bougie, Beverly Hills kind of places.
Look at you.
Trying to sell them a book for, and they were like, no thanks, it's okay, thank you, etc. So that made me feel really dejected. The one thing that came out of it was a family who sold me their bike for $1. I went to sell them a book for their children, and they said, listen, right now, we can't afford it. And they asked me, how are you getting around this place? I was in a place called DeKalb, Illinois, which is out in the sticks. And they're like, so how are you getting around? I said, I'm walking. I said, okay, fine, we have a bike that we're not using. And he said, my grandfather told me never to give anything away for free. So I'll sell it to you for $1.
Interesting.
I did 3 weeks of trying to sell books. I didn't sell one. And I said, I'm done.
Wrong to you.
For me, that I considered a failure. But I think I bit off more than I could chew without actually now looking at what does it entail and how does it actually work, and who do I need to actually then look at in terms of seeing, for example, seeing who has gone before you and how that, and talking to them and seeing what are the pit traps or what are the pitfalls, etc., etc. But these guys were all like, yeah, we've sold books, we're amazing, etc., etc. And I was like, okay, fine. But yeah, that was one monumental failure that I would say I can put a tick to.
Right.
Yeah.
And your biggest success? What you would consider now?
What I consider my biggest success? Actually, that's a difficult one to answer. Yeah, I think anybody has ever asked me that question. Because success manifests in different ways. There's the aspect of material. There's the aspect of health, well-being. There's the aspect of family units.
Of course.
So I'd say if I was to look at all those, I think biggest success I'd probably lean towards family. Being able to raise my kids as best I can. Or at least trying to provide for them the same way my parents tried to provide for us.
Right.
And from that stems, I think, family unit for me is very important. I think from that stems a lot of things. So that would be my biggest, I'd say that one of my biggest successes. Yeah, beyond that, I wouldn't say I can pinpoint something that would say that this is absolutely the one thing. I suppose being in media was a success, but I didn't continue in it. But not because you grow, you grow out of things and stuff like that.
Grow into new things.
That's a good question. Actually, we'll leave that. We'll
as people like to say,
yeah, we'll circle around back to that.
Nice one.
Yeah, but it's the journey generally, media-wise, and even media-wise, obviously, because it's played a huge part in terms of my life as a whole.
Yes.
But being able to then turn around and say, okay, media is not the end-all and be-all of everything. I think that would then consider myself the biggest success, not having to rest my laurels and say, beyond this, there's nothing else I can do. And it's not like I didn't have an interest. I do have an interest, and I still do media, not as intensely as I used to.
Yeah.
But in all that time I was doing that, I was always doing something else that allows me to then, and I'm going to say this a lot, allows me to grow beyond just saying, okay, fine, this is all I can do. I think the ability to recognize opportunities is one thing. Being able to take them all the time is a skill. I'm risk averse, so I sometimes tend to say, okay, fine, just maybe back off a bit. But there's something that you read somewhere where when people say, when one door shuts, you're so busy looking at that shut door, you don't realize the one that's actually open. You're just you're here. That's all it is. I think it's a dangerous way to be. Yeah, but to each their own, I guess.
True.
Yeah.
So, my very last question.
Shoot.
What happened to your English name?
I don't have one.
You're kidding.
I was going to say something profane. I kid you not.
Like, well done. Congratulations.
Yes,
That was a great comeback.
Because when was I? 13 years old. Lamington United Church. Baptized and confirmed. Mom and Dad said to us, right? People have English names or Christian names. They're not English names. What is a Christian name versus an English?
Okay, see, that's why I asked an English name.
But no, okay, yeah, fine. So a lot of time that back in my day, yeah, they were called Christian names. Anyway, so we were told when you get to the age of 18, you can then swear an affidavit to choose the name that you want. I didn't even know what an affidavit was at the time. And it's just so much easier to just go by the name of Waweru Njoroge. And that was...
It made sense.
Yeah. And as it is, you get something, like I said, Wes, Dub, Dudi. Yeah, those are 3 nicknames I've had. And then
it's okay. I'm assuming you omitted the 4th one intentionally, but it's okay.
No, I don't even know.
We're not going to judge you.
Those are the 3 I know. But okay, to answer officially, I do not have an English/Christian name.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We're very grateful. So I had been asked to ask whether you play a sport, and no, jazz, listening to jazz does not count.
No, I've recently taken up tennis.
Right.
I kind of stopped because I've injured my toe. I was... Okay, this is all injury related. When COVID hit, there's a golf course, there's a golf club that decided to try and attract more members. They were going to reduce their entry or their subs.
Right.
So I saw that opportunity, went back to golf. And I was in a range one day and I overswung and I activated an injury that I had a long time ago. So my sciatica basically went and I was like, I don't want to feel that pain again. So tennis is something I've recently taken up. Again, another injury, but I'll go back to that. So that's currently what I'm doing.
What you're doing?
Yeah.
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 Maybe you want to try fencing as well? Or
hey, I don't know whether there's any fencing clubs.
Does not include you getting an injury? I mean, what are the odds?
Chess.
There you go.
Well, chess is it a sport? Darts is a sport, apparently.
Is it?
Apparently. They've got the World Darts Championship. I was like, you just throw it, okay. It requires, yes, hand-eye coordination. So, I mean, let me not knock it because I'm sure you can't put me in front of a dartboard right now and tell me, hit the bullseye. I'll be like, yeah. And obviously, yeah. So, I don't know, tennis is fun. And the reason I got into tennis is because my daughter's doing it. And I was like, I can do this. So when I started, actually, it's a lot of fun, actually. And it's a good way to exercise. And it doesn't really take up too much time. 4 hours walking around the golf course. And the thing is, golf started off because of a social, in terms of where business deals are made.
Yes.
And socializing was on the golf course, basically. Now it then became a betting, the whole game of golf in Kenya became about betting. And that basically just left a very bad taste in a lot of people now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for me, to get back to your question, tennis for me at the moment, any other sport that I'd think of taking up at this point in time, no.
So we're back to dancing. Okay, got it.
Well, dancing is fencing or dancing? You said fencing.
It's fencing and dancing.
Well, fencing, I suppose, it's fancy way. Well, it's dancing with a not a sword. It's a saber in your hand, as it were. But anyway, yeah. I don't know. I don't think it's ever been appealing. So.
Job well done. You've done incredibly. Anyway, thank you so much for taking time to sit with us.
Thank you so much.
I've learned quite a lot, and I hope soon enough that you sit here and we'll be talking to you about fencing or dancing, who knows?
Inshallah. Let's see what happens.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for sitting with us, and we've had a great conversation with one of the most incredible human beings. I remember when he came in, he asked, so have you had conversations with the other celebrities or other, notable names? I was like, yeah, absolutely. You. So we're humbled, and thank you for taking time. And I know, again, on Tuesday, especially now, it's not easy, but I really appreciate that you took time to sit with us and share your wisdom. Really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, my name is Cynthia Mwangi. See you again on Behind the Mic.